Hey, so good evening, everyone. I am Mayank. I'm currently doing my master's from over here, and yeah, I'm your TA for this course. So today we are going to talk about Dash and Plotly, right? So let's get right into it. So basically, Plotly is a company which has a lot of open source projects, and lucky for us, they have a very good library for Python, and Dash is one of their frameworks. So basically, Dash is a framework which allows us to quickly build out the charts without worrying too much about the HTML, CSS, or JavaScript, right? So it uses Plotly JS, it uses React JS, and today we are gonna see how easy it is to get started with it. So you don't strictly need a lot of knowledge to get started, but if you have prior knowledge, it would be a little easier to pick up because it exposes a lot of functions for us, right? So if you know what function you're looking for, it would be easy to search. And those are same as HTML tag names. And yeah, also like they have a really cool and excellent gallery, right? So all the code, all the dashboards which you are seeing in this gallery, those are all open source. So you can have some inspiration online. And the link you're gonna find in PPT, and you can even Google it out. So this dashboard right here was the charts which are all built in Dash using Plotly. And Plotly in itself, they have their own set of charts, right? So all these charts can be used for Python, R, and Dash. So all this information you're gonna find on the website as well. So yeah, to get started with, right? So today we are gonna use Python as our preferred programming language. So first, of course, you have to install the pip module for Dash, right? So you can just install 1.16. It's the latest version at the moment. And if you go and run any of the old source code, then that might have an older version. So just make sure you're on the latest version. Otherwise, we might run into some issues. So I have already installed. So I'll just skip this part and I'll just yeah, do a live code walkthrough. So to begin with, I'm going to show you how to start with a hello world kind of program. So basically you have to start by importing the Dash library, and you need to have a main class. So in Python, generally this is the syntax, and I'm using PyCharm as an editor. You can use your preferred editor of choice. This one is pretty cool though, and it's free for students. So yeah, here is where our main code is gonna go into, right? So we will have to call our server here. So to get started, all you have to do is just dash dot dash. So this will give you reference to the app, and this app is basically your server. And to run the server, all you have to do is just call the app.run server. And if you want debug support, you can just mention debug equals to true. So that way, whatever changes you will do, you will see it live in the real time. And to have our typical hello world, all you have to do is you have to create a basic layout, right? And it has to have single HTML element. So we are gonna use div for now. And this HTML element is a part of, again, Dash library. So for that, we have to import Dash HTML components. And all this information, again, you can find it on the website. It's on the very first page of the documentation. You will find the link in the presentation. So yeah, it has a lot of components, right? It has header, division, block, all these. So in the div, you can have, single component, and you can have hierarchy of components. So that goes inside children. For the very simple demo, I'm just gonna use single header element. And H1 is the syntax. This is basically means heading 1. And this is our basic demo. And to run it, you can just do Python and hello.py, or if you're using the IDE, you can just click on run this program. So as soon as you do this, you will get a URL in your console, right? So if you go to the console, this is what you will see. So it's actually very easy to get started. You don't have to worry about any of the server or any of the other component, right? As soon as you import the library, you will get all of this goodness built into it. And if you make any changes, right? Like, let me say heading here, and you just save it and you come and refresh this page, it will actually auto refresh for you. If not, you can refresh it out. So you will see the changes instantly. So yeah, this is as easy as to get started. Now I'm gonna show you, a little bit more about the component. So like I just saw in the assignment, you have to build a drop down, right? So for that to work, all you have to do is, just check out the HTML component of Dash. So since you're pretty new to it, it's gonna be difficult to remember all this. So yeah, best look at the documentation. So we have this URL dash HTML components, and here are all the complete list of components. So to take any simple components for starters, or even let's say we want to go and build a drop down, you can look for that keyword. I think it's called as, there are multiple keywords here. One is checklist, and yeah, so advanced keyword would be in the core library. So this is the dash core, and here you can have the all these other components, right? So let's see if we have a drop down here. Yep, we have a drop down here. And the other link had just HTML components. So all you have to do is, you can just take it as it is and you can customize it as you go. So to get started, you have to make sure that you import this thing, right? So like we imported HTML, we will import dash core components. You can name it whatever you want. DCC is just the acronym for this. And all you have to do next is you can just keep on appending to this list, right? So think of it like a vertical dashboard for the time being, but you can customize it. So yeah, in the dash core components, you can just look for, autocomplete. So it will help you pick up quickly. So yeah, you have to use a drop down, and the allowed arguments you can find from over here. So different components may have different arguments, right? So every drop down would have a list of arguments. So this is what you can specify here. It basically accepts a list, right? And a list will have a label which would be visible. And if you want a different sort of value, then you can specify over here. It can be different than the label. So this is all you have to do. And I have just saved it. And if you go and refresh, you will see the drop down. And if you want to have a default value selected, right, then you can just specify the default value, and it will be pre-selected for you. So it could be like a initial selection. So it can help you filtering information and all that. And the value needs to be same as what you have specified over here. So let's say I've chosen SF, right? So it should select San Francisco for us by default. So yeah, it already selected. If I refresh it, you will see it here, right? And if I change the value, it will automatically reflect in a second. So they have this entire mechanism where it will continuously do the live reload for you. And if there are any error or any codes, right, then you can see it over here. So currently it's all fine. And dropdown is going to have a single selection. But if you want a multiple selection, then probably you're looking for a checklist kind of component, right? So you can even find that over here in the list. And I made sure to include this in the presentation as well. So yeah, coming back to presentation, I'll go back to the code. So we discussed actually two types of components. One was the HTML component and another one was the core component, right? So HTML components are your basic tags, like your heading, block, paragraph, all these. And core components are, like a complex components. It could be a checklist, radio button, and all these. So yeah, this is a very simple layout example, right? So in the current example, I've just used header and a div. And then this is a core component example. So I can show you how to, use tabs and all. So let's do that next. So yeah, then what we'll try to do is we will try to have a tab-like structure, and we will try to put some component in one tab and a few other component in different tab. So you can just look for tabs again in the documentation. So it looks like dcc.tab. Give me a second. Yeah, so this is your tabs component, and tabs component will have a tab inside of it. So this is how it will look like. We will try to have some components here and a few components in the other tab. So to do that, yeah, just come over here, and instead of drop down, we can just do dcc.tabs. And every HTML component would have an ID, right? So this ID can help you whenever you want to, get a particular value, or when you're programming for any of the callbacks. So you can give some ID over here, and whatever ID you will give, you can even find it in the browser. So if you go to the browser and just right click and inspect element, then you should see the ID. So this can be helpful while debugging your programs, right? So yeah, Just let me get rid of that. Yeah. So for tabs, what I will do is I will try to have multiple children inside of it, and tabs will have children of tab, right? So that way you can infer it. So this will use dcc.tab, and you can have a label to the tab, whatever you want to call it. I'm gonna call tab 1. Tab can have some value. I'm gonna repeat the same thing for now. And then you can have multiple components nested, right? So this will again go inside the children. So so let's say if I wanted to have this drop down in this tab, then you can achieve it this way. And you can have, more tabs here. So I'm gonna make one more tab. And in this, we can have a simple HTML div. Later, we can try to put a chart inside the other tab. So it's gonna be html.div. And it can just have a basic stuff, or we can have a header here. So once you do this, you can go back and refresh it. You will see the tab here, right? And you can click on the tabs, and you can see the corresponding elements. And if you want to have a default tab selected, then you can specify in the value, right? So whichever value you will specify here, so that would be selected by default. So this was basically the component demo. So this was more of a dash specific stuff. But now coming to Plotly, where we want to have some graphs in this. For that, we are going to look at Plotly documentation. So what we can do is we can try to have a basic scatter chart or a bar plot done, and then we will try to see some advanced features, right? So in the Plotly, let's say we want to have a scatter chart, then all you have to do is just import the proper library. So all that information you can find on the website, right? So for that, first I will go with a default example, and then we will try to create one of our own example. So you have to import the Plotly Express library, and this Plotly Express has a lot of data sets, right? And I'll just clear out the tabs part. So in the particular example, they are specifying the value, but if you see, even they have an iris dataset which has very good info, and it has a lot of dimensions as well. So they are making use of pandas here. Pandas is again a Python framework. If you know pandas, you can actually modify the data and do any filtering of any sort. So you can just initially import the data frame, and then you can just import the whatever chart you're looking for. So for that to work, all you have to do is dash core component dot graphs, and in the graph you have to specify the figure. So this figure is where your Plotly chart information would go. So yeah, all you have to do is this, and you will see the chart. And the charts inside the dash, right? They support, the default hover out of the box, and you can just select whatever area you want to zoom into. So all this is there for us out of the box. You don't have to do anything extra, although you can do customize it, right? So in this particular example, we had X as this width, and Y was the length column. So this is what we got out of the box. But if you want to, rename it, then you can specify it as another argument. So all this information, you can actually find it on the website in the documentation, right? So if, let's say, you want to color the charts based on, color your dots based on the species, then you can specify the color argument. And this will refresh itself to show you that. Yep. So this is like the basic Plotly and Dash integration. If you have any questions, I can take a moment's pause, else I can go ahead and show you more of our advanced features. All right. So
thanks a lot. So this is really good. We have a lot more time actually. So you can, we have about, it goes We have 20 more minutes at least.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't know what was the timing situation. So I
Well, yeah. I mean,
short.
hopefully people have some questions. Please be free to verbalize whatever you want to know.
Yeah, yeah. Please let me know if you want to, see a different kind of charts apart from what I have in my presentation or what I have showed you. I can just quickly show you a live demo. Yeah, my main point was, since this is a new language to you guys or a new framework, so I showed you how you can, quickly get the information which you are looking for to build the charts for the assignments. So let's try to do a bar graph, right? Let's try to have another bar chart over here, other than the scatter plot which we just did. So I'm gonna use one of the data set which I already had, right? This is a gap-minded data set. So this data set has, country information, year, population, continent, life expectancy, as well as the GDP. So what we can try is we can, try to have a scatter plot of this information, and then we will try to see how can we, filter out the information based on the year. So this would be basically your slicing and dicing of the data. So to get started, what you have to do is you can use pandas or any of your favorite framework, right? So you have to import this information. So I'm importing pandas, and pandas is a thing called, read CSV, and this particular file is a CSV file, right? And you don't have to have the URL. You can even download the file, but I'm gonna use the URL for now. So you can do pandas.read CSV, and you can specify this information. This will basically give you a data frame, right? I'm gonna call it data frame now. And if I have to quickly do a scatter plot, right? So I just have to specify the X and Y, and we have to make sure that the X and Y are passed correctly in pandas, right? So I know this one would get passed correctly since the names are all present and the number of columns are all same. So let's see, one second. Yeah, let's try to use GDP versus life expectancy. So whatever you want, that could be your X, and life expectancy could be Y. We will just see how the graph looks like, and then I will try to show you about how we can make it better. So I'm refreshing it. Sometimes it may break, right? Because you are changing the syntax as you go along. So in that case, just, restart the application. Or you may notice, that you already have a code running, and then you try to run a different set of code. So it may say that the port is already used. So in that scenario, just, try to stop the earlier application and just refresh it. So this is like, the basic data. Currently, it's not looking as good because, this GDP information is basically on a different scale. This is basically, we are going to have to normalize it by using a log scale. And currently this chart is not very readable, right? Unless you zoom it and see. So let's try to make it more readable. So yeah, what we can do is first we can fix the scale, right? So it has, it already has a feature called log X, log Y, and even like it supports a lot of other scales also, right? So all that information you're going to find in the documentation. So currently I've just used log X true. So this should fix the scale for me. Now the numbers are looking more linear, right? But still, like we can't get much out of this visualization at the moment. So let's try to change the size of the dots based on the number of population the country has. So to do that, we have a size parameter, right? So in this we can specify our variable, and the variable name pop which I'm giving is from here. So I'm going to show this, and I will try to show what happens if you change the variable or give it a wrong variable, right? So it's not going to recognize that. So in that scenario, you may get this kind of error, right? So the application may crash if it doesn't find the variable which should be there. So this information you should be able to decipher from the logs. So yeah, I've just resetted the application. If it crashes, just try to restart it again. So our chart is looking better now. Now we know which country has more population from the glance, but we can make it better, right? So we don't know which information is coming from which continent too. And we can actually color code it based on the continent information. So yeah, I'm gonna rerun it, because as soon as I stop typing, right, it tries to run it. Sometimes it doesn't get the right keywords. So yeah, now we have some high level information which we can glance out, right? That this particular continent is Africa, the greener one, or the other one is Asia. So we have a better context now. But still, the problem is like the chart is not as focused. So we want it to be more focused, right? It has a lot of white spaces on the sides. So you can actually specify the maximum size or minimum size. So I think for this particular example, the size 60 worked out great for me. But you can try experimenting and see which value works out best for you, right? So I have done that. And if on the hover, I want to show the country information, right? Because currently it's not showing the country information. Then it supports even that. So you have this hover name over here. So you can just specify that. Now I'm gonna refresh it, so it should be more readable. Yeah. So now I readily know, right, that which country's GDP we are talking about.
So Mayank, you could also set these colors with a menu button, right, on the interface itself, right?
Yeah, we can do. So currently it has taken a default scale, but we can definitely change the scale. And
there could be a menu button that says, okay, color the females blue and the males red or whatever, like whatever
right.
it is.
Yeah, it is definitely doable. And
so can you show us how to put the menu button?
Sure. Professor, you're looking to give the color from the menu?
Oh, no, I don't want to embarrass you now. but maybe, like some sort of menu-driven thing where you can you can select something.
Yes.
Anything, whatever you have practiced.
Yeah. So for this particular demo, actually we had a multi-year information, right? So this multi-year information doesn't give us much picture. So what I prepared was, we can filter out based on a slider.
Okay.
Or instead of slider, I can convert it to drop down and just show how that can be done, right? Mm-hmm. So that we only see information for a particular year, so we have better context. So yeah.
Sounds good.
All right. Yeah. So to do that, what we can basically do is, first let me add a slider. Then I'm gonna link both of these two pieces, right? So the dash core component has a slider component in its library. You can look that over here, right? It has range slider as well as slider. So currently we are just looking for a single value. And this is how the syntax looks like. It need a ID. We can specify minimum or maximum value. So minimum could be, the minimum year information which we have in this list, and maximum could be maximum year. So we never get an empty chart. And we can specify the step information and all the information, right? So yeah, I'm gonna use the slider and I will customize it to our needs. So yeah, I'm gonna call it filter. Let's call it year filter. And minimum value, right? Minimum could be the minimum function we can invoke from the pandas data frame. Right, so we don't get extra value, and we can do the similar thing for the maximum as well. So yeah, we have a min and a max function. And you can actually, specify the initial value. So initial value we could set to the first year information which we have, right? Which is again our minimum value information. And for this particular example, we don't need step as such. So I'm gonna make step none, because like there is not gonna be any information between the years, right? So let's see how it looks. Right, so we get a slider over here, but currently it does not have any label selected. So let's try to put some label marks, right? So for that, you can specify the marks, and this marks actually, it needs a dictionary. So what we can do is we can read all the unique years. And whatever I'm doing over here, these are all, pandas function. You can try it in the console. So what I can do is this way I got all the year information for all the year in this particular data frame. And I can quickly form a dictionary here by directly specifying, year colon year. And this information has to be a string. So I'm casting it to string, but currently it's going to get passed as a number. Right. So let me just check if there is any syntax issue. Otherwise, I have a syntax ready with me. Right. Yeah, I'll just leave. Okay, it's actually missing a comma, right? Because this was one component and this was another. So let me just rerun it. Right. So we actually, got our labels, and this is how it looks like. So currently it's not interactive, but we do see all the labels, right? And you can, select one particular year, but you can't select anywhere in between because we give step as none. If you remove this thing, then you can choose anything from the slider, right? So let me quickly try to show you. So yeah, but we don't want this because we don't have this information with us. So hence we have done step none. Now let's try to, link these two things. So to link the information, we need to make use of something called callback, right? So callback is basically a function which get calls whenever any event occurs. So in this particular scenario, selecting a value is an event, right? So for that to work, we need to actually create a function, and we can actually define a callback on a particular function. So let's call this information, like update chart, or we can give some relevant name, and we are gonna get year as an input to this function, right? So that's why I've kept a year, and then we have to specify app.callback. So this is something which is a part of dash, right? You can import it, and this should have an input and an output. So this would be available in the dash dependencies package. So let's worry about this later. Let me just try to write the information, and then we'll wire it out. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to create a new data frame, right? So let's call it filter data frame, and it should contain information for this particular year. So basically this is what we are looking for. So this will filter out the information and give it to us. And now let's try to move this figure inside the function, and let's try to generate it at the runtime. So this is our input, and we are just gonna give it an ID, and it will get automatically called for us. So let's call it GDP chart. Now how the callback works is, right, we need to give what is our output. So output is our chart, which is going to get updated, and here we have to give the chart ID, which is basically this, and it should actually update the figure, right? And input is our slider, so we have to give the slider ID here, which is our year filter, and the event is value event. Yeah, so let's try to run this. Yeah. So if there is any error, right, you should be able to see it from here. So let me just see if I made a typo or something.
Pretty brave, Mayank.
Yeah, the demo always.
It's always problematic.
Yeah, no problem. Let me just.
So while you do this for the lab, you can just produce these visualizations one by one, right, in the Python code. You don't have to make a dashboard like this for the lab one, right? Just produce these one by one, right? You can just drive it from the Python code, and then show the next one. Okay?
Yeah.
So I first want you to get comfortable with the whole idea of visualization and the Plotly package, and then next for the later labs you'll do a dashboard.
Yep. So I actually for the timing I replaced it because we didn't have time to debug it. So but this is how it will look like, right? So now what happens is whenever you update anything, this will get this information from the callback. right? And then it will try to filter out the frame, and it will update the chart over here. And I have given a transition here so you can have a smoother animation. If you don't animate it, then it will just look little jittery. So yeah, like this, right? But if you enable animation, it could look smoother. So this is basically the filter for this particular chart. And then I can show you, if you select a particular value and you want to update a subchart, so how to implement of something of that sort. Again, I'll take a pause for any questions, else I can just quickly show the next piece. All right.
There was a question in the chat window. So you're not required to use Dash for the lab 1, but later on you will use it for the later labs. You will use it, but not for lab 1. You can just do one by one. Okay. Mayank, will you also show us how to put charts side by side, or not really?
Yeah, I can show that, but putting charts side by side requires a little bit of CSS knowledge.
I see. I see. Okay.
Let me just quickly share.
Maybe we'll bring you back another time for that. Otherwise, it may get too confusing.
Yeah.
We'll bring you back another time for that. So let's just show us the sequence of the sequential. The way we do it now.
Yeah. So currently, we are actually giving everything sequentially, right? So you can see here, this is, if I don't specify the argument, this is basically this children argument. So we are giving everything in this children, and it's actually, taking it like a list. But the tab example which we saw before, that had an intricate hierarchy. So I can try updating the presentation, and I can try to include a chart over there, right? Having something side by side. So the next thing I'm going to show is, so let's say, you're hovering over a country and you want to see that GDP information for a particular country, right? So I can just quickly show that demo. So again, like the last time around, we'll begin the same thing, right? So we will specify a graph component, and this component would update from a callback, right? So let's try to give it some other name. Let me call it year population. And then we are going to have a function over here. We can give whatever name here, it doesn't really matter. Then again, we have to define a callback. So this particular callback, right, it's going to have a hover data. So the syntax you can find in the documentation. So I'm going to use the syntax here, which I've already tested out, which works. So output is going to be, again, like the new chart which we are trying to build. And we have to update actually the figure of the chart. So ID is going to be the same. And input is going to be hover data, right? So, and hover data of this particular chart. So this is what I'm going to put in. And you will get this as an input here. So first, just let's try to see, if we are getting something, and then we can modify it. So by default, whenever the graph will start, it will not have any information. So if it doesn't have anything, then you can just return, right? Else we can, for the time being, we can return some string. So this should have all the information, and I'm not sure if it's going to work for a graph or not. Let me try to do it for a div. Yeah, and this may not be figure, but let's see. Yeah, give me a second. This one we can figure out. So basically what I did was, right, we have a basic callback documentation here. So for the div, I think, the component should be children here. Yeah. So this should be children. Let's see. Yeah. So as soon as you hover over it, right, you get some information. So yeah, even like I don't remember all the syntax, but I generally use documentation. and every component is going to require a different children, right? So by doing this exercise, we are able to see that, on hovering we are able to get certain information. And now let's try to make a proper chart out of it. So if you look into it, right, it's actually showing you the index, the X, Y value and all that, right? But all we currently care about is the country name. So let's just try to, filter out to and transform it to that form. So from the syntax, I can see that first I'm going to have a point, and it's going to be a 1D array of size 0 currently, because it's only going to have one element, size 1 actually. And then I'm going to use hover text. So let me try to do that. Yeah. So let's see. Yep. So basically we are getting the country name. Now let's put it in a variable so we can filter out the data frame like we did last time. And in this scenario, let's just initialize it with empty. Yeah. Now we know that, we're going to have to make a chart. So let's try to use a similar approach. So this time, instead of year, I'm going to specify country. And this is going to be this information. And let's try to make a bar chart, right? So let's just see what is the syntax. So syntax looks like this, right? Plotly.bar, and then you have to give X and Y information. So the first parameter is your data frame. The second is X and Y, right? So I think we can have year as an X input. Yeah, let's just try this, right? And we have to make sure that we return this, right? So this should actually give us an instance of figure, and we are supposed to return the figure from over here. And this thing should go into a graph, right? Not a HTML component. So this would look like dcc.graph. And at the same time, children property doesn't work for graph. So for graph, you need a figure. So let's just see if it works. So yeah, we do see two charts. So if you don't select anything, second chart is empty. And if you're selecting a particular chart, then you can just see all the values are changing, right? As soon as you hover to the country. But currently, like the chart, it doesn't have a title. So it's actually difficult to see for which country we are seeing this information. So we can actually, try to put that information in a title. So lucky for us, we do have a title support in Plotly. So for that, all you have to do is just specify the title here. And I actually don't remember all this name, so I start typing and let it autocomplete for me. So this is a handy way to learn. So the chart is year versus pop, and country I'm going to specify like this. So now you can see this information, right, changing, like the country name is changing. So we have a better visual information looking at this, and you can try filtering out the data by zooming it, and you can see the second plot changing accordingly. So yeah, this was the linking demo which I had. If anyone has any question, I can take it now.
So that someone mentions in the chatbot, can you use dash in Jupyter Notebook?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you definitely can do that.
Yeah, they have a very nice support, and actually their documentation is super useful, right? So compared to what I showed here, if you go to their documentation, you're gonna find a lot of sample built-in code, right? Which is gonna help you do that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But for the right. So for you can use Jupyter Notebook for the first lab, maybe the second one, but then when you have to do a dashboard, then you wouldn't use it anymore.
Yeah.
Because you have to expose it to the expose. You have to expose it to a web page, right? Not within the Jupyter Notebook.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, any more questions? So Mayank, this was fabulous, really great. I'm so glad we recorded it. This will live forever. For the assignment, do we need a drop-down menu? Okay. For the assignment, do we need a drop-down menu to choose the variables? What do you need you can implement a drop-down menu, but you showed us, right, Mayank?
Yeah, we have a drop-down support.
Yeah, so that one you should have on top. So basically you would create, so you need to have some sort of menu where you select these, but maybe if you want to have a drop-down menu, then you need to have a dash also, right?
Yep.
So
I try to show how to convert this to a drop-down menu.
So maybe, but then for this involves a lot more programming than if you just produce the visualizations, right? So
Right.
as we just saw. So maybe for the first lab, it's okay to not have a drop-down menu, right? Because they're really, but is there a way to drive it like with, that you can select the variables in the
Yeah, you can.
With a simple thing?
Yep. So let me just see if I can quickly, convert the slider to that. So basically, I have taken the syntax from the documentation, right? So we have a drop-down component over here.
Mm-hmm.
So currently the ID is demo dropdown. Now we have to make sure, that the options are correct. So it requires this particular data in this particular syntax. So let me just try to build it on the fly. So I think this should work. Basically, we want something similar. And then we have to have this information. Give me 1 second. Yeah. So this is what we are looking for. 1 second. Yeah, I'll have to actually figure out the syntax, but we can definitely do that. So let me just use the default syntax for now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm trying to, have the dynamic components instead of static components. So all I have to do is just iterate over the list. So I can build it, separately.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep. Or I can just process it separately and then have a list here. So this would be my menu, right? So it's gonna be empty, and then I can just append a string. So string is